Everything, everything gonna be all right this morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another installment of It's Me Speaking to You. I am, as always, your ever-faithful host, Mr. Jeffrey Wilson, coming to you live and direct from the Gateway to the West, St. Louis, Missouri, and returning for a trifecta, a third time, man. Author, filmmaker, the guy is absolutely killing it. I am so proud. He has a recent film he just completed and just premiered. I believe it was in Detroit. Correct me if I'm wrong, my friend. It is called White Boy, which chronicles the life and times and the continual incarceration of white boy Rick Wershe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program, Mr. Seth Ferranti. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. And you are correct. It did premiere in Detroit, a week ago, Friday, March 31st.
Yeah, and I saw the picture. It was very, very, very cool, man. It played to clearly a packed house, man. I don't know how many people there were, but that looked like I did not see a single empty seat.
Yeah, it was in a 1,000-seat theater at the Detroit Institute of Arts, right downtown, and it was sold out. And then they had two more showings kind of out in the suburbs, and they both sold out too. They were in smaller theaters, like 350. So it sold out like all three showings, like 1,700 people.
Oh.
And we won the audience choice awards. We won that too for the best film of the whole film festival.
Oh, that's what's up, my man. That's what's up. And I told you when you first said you were getting into this one, I was like, whoa. It was kind of a curveball because it seemed like it was kind of a dormant subject. Now when it was really tapped into it, of course, white boy Rick Wershe is lore in, the criminal history and all that stuff that goes on in Detroit and even beyond. Help me out, man. Let me sit back and just shut my mouth for a minute and let us know, if you don't mind, the story of white boy Rick Wershe.
Well, when I was locked up, I was locked up mostly on the East Coast, like in the Northeast region. And I was in a lot of jails, like West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and they had a lot of Detroit guys there. So, we're going like way back to the mid '90s, and I started hearing about this guy, White Boy Rick, and I was kind of fascinated because being a young white guy in prison too, I was like, who is this young white guy that they said was like, the head of these black criminal enterprises in the black underworld. And the way these guys talked about him, he just had like this, outsized, massive legend, and like anybody that's really infamous or, kind of out there, he had as many detractors as he had supporters, but there was just all this stuff. And I was kind of mesmerized, and I was like, who is this dude? So I heard all this legend and stuff like this, and, eventually I started writing about street legends myself, and I started writing different books. So I decided to reach out to him, because I was interested in his story, because I heard all the legends, but I was actually looking for books and different stuff about him, and there was nothing, really out there just besides, the mythology, that you would hear in the street or that you hear in the prisons. So I reached out to him, and I started writing him. And I started finding, he started like revealing like the real facts of his case. And, he was in prison and I was in prison, and we were kind of writing through my wife, and he was breaking it all down to me. And, he told me like the FBI recruited him as a foreman when he was like 14, like through his dad, who was working, for the feds as a confidential informant. And he said, they made him into a drug dealer. They blew him up. They gave him fake ID. They gave him money. They sent him on trips to Vegas. They hooked him up with contacts to sell drugs, and that's basically how he got in the game. And, I had heard the rumors because even in prison, like half the people were detractors, and they said, oh, he's a rat. He's a snitch. He's that. And when you're in prison, that's about the worst thing you can be called.
Yeah, for
but,
sure.
Here's this dude. I'm writing to him. And like he's telling me the whole story because, at this time in the when I started writing him, like probably around 2005, he'd been locked up, going on close to 2 decades, and he wanted the real story to get out there because he was trying to get out of prison. He'd been locked up all this time, basically for 8 kilos of cocaine, a nonviolent offense. And
which at one point in time in Detroit did mean mandatory life, but they've changed that legislation like a long time. So people who were at a certain age that committed certain offenses that demanded life at one point in time were released, and all of those people have been released except for Rick Wershe.
Yeah, so that's why it's just there's so many layers to his story. It's like when you think you peeled away one layer and you got to the bottom, there's just more stuff and more stuff. And like that law you referred to was called the 650 lifer law, and anybody busted with over 650 grams of cocaine or heroin was given a life sentence. So that was one thing, and it was eventually repealed, and you know he was still in. But another thing to his case, he was 17 when he got busted. You know, he was a juvenile, so they gave him a life sentence as a juvenile, which around 2012 the Supreme Court said that's illegal. And since 2012, juveniles who murdered people and killed people have gone home, and he's still in prison. And then, like, when you peel back the layers even more, you see, you know, in Michigan, even for somebody like with the 650 lifer law, you're supposed to have a parole hearing every 5 years. White Boy Rick had one parole hearing in 2003, and he's been locked up now going on 29 years. So there's just all this stuff, and you're like, why is this guy still in prison? You know, and I just kept, you know, researching and investigating. And I'm not going to say he did a lot of stuff to complicate matters, you know, because he was in the state. He had life in the state, in Michigan State. And then in 91, some of the same FBI agents that first put him in the game came back to him, you know, because they knew he was dating Mayor Coleman's niece. You know, so he knew, you know, it was from what
Mayor Coleman Young, Detroit Mayor Coleman Young, you're saying he was dating his niece, which I've even heard there was a security detail attached to Mayor Coleman's niece, just not to interfere with any drug transactions, but to just protect Coleman Young's niece.
Yeah, and then like even her, you know, she was married to Johnny Curry, who were, you know, the Curry brothers. Yep. Yeah, they were like the big East Side drug lords, and that was actually who Rick was gathering info on, and they got 20 years. So Rick helped get them locked up.
Who was interesting was at the premiere of your movie. One of the Curry brothers, I forget, Johnny Curry, I believe, was at the premiere of your movie. It's crazy. He's been out. Out.
Johnny Curry was in the film. Johnny Curry even says, "Man, they need to let the guy out." You know, and it's like this crazy, you know, revenge thing, because, you know, he helped the feds with a 91, like it was 91, early 90s police corruption case in Detroit. You know, and they went in, they got like the police chief, and they got a bunch of the people like on that security detail that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of them went to prison, and Rick was actually the one that, you know, he vouched for the agent, you know, told the Kathy Curry, he said, look, you know, this agent, this is my connect. You know, he's trying to do some stuff, you know, hook him up with your people so he can bring stuff in here. So he got the agent in that made the whole case, the undercover, you know, and so once he did that, the feds took him. The feds couldn't get him out of the state sentence, you know, because it was a state sentence. But they took him out of the feds and they put him in the witness protection program. And that's why even, you know, it's like he disappeared, you know, and even in prison, that's why a lot of dudes were like, you know, where is this dude? Nobody knew where he was at until 2005 when he caught this other case in Florida. He was in the witness protection program in the Bureau of Prisons, and he caught this other case with another street legend named Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols for this stolen car ring. You know, I mean, these dudes were in prison, so it's not like they were doing it. They were just like, you know, saying, oh, you can send this car up to Detroit. And really, Rick's whole, everything he did in this fair, it's like, you know, he got his mom like a car for a good price, and they gave him a case for it, right, you know, and they connect him to the stolen. But just it's like as soon as you think you know the whole story with Rick, it's like, it's just so much stuff and so much complications. And, you know, I'm not saying that the dude, you know, it's not like he's innocent. This is not a wrongful conviction. You know, it's an extreme case of over-sentencing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, nobody is in jail 29 years for 8 kilos of cocaine. So, you know, and I
especially it being charged at 17, 16 or whatever it was, like that's crazy.
Yeah, as a nonviolent offender, but you know, when you look at it more and more, you see, you know, we even interviewed a homicide cop, you know, William Rice, and he even said, like in that 2003 parole hearing, he had instructions from his boss to go there and say a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that White Boy Rick didn't get out. you know, and then you just look at the newspaper headlines, like, you know, in the film, we have some of the newspaper headlines from Detroit where they said, like, he was the head of Best Friends. He wasn't the head of Best Friends. I mean, he knew all those dudes. They were all, you know, the Brown brothers were all from the same hood as him. But, you know, at one time, after a couple of years, you know, Nate Boone Kraft, who was the main hitman for the Best Friends.
Boy, I saw that picture saw that picture with you and him. I'm like, holy my dad who's in town, and he's sitting there listening right now. I'm like, Pops, you don't know the background of this cat right here, but dude, Nate Boone Kraft was the I don't want to wind up
30 confessed murders, man.
And he wound up getting out. He wound up getting, you know, because, you know, he wound up giving information about other cats that wound up taking down basically the Best Friends, like you said, Reg Book Brown, all the cats. Yeah, he did a Sammy the Bull, but, you know, even because I talked to them extensively about this, and, you know, I know in the streets or even in prison, everybody's like, oh, snitch, rat, this, but, you know, the dudes in Best Friends who was his crew, I mean, they tried to kill him. I mean, Nate Boone he's all shot up, man. He got hit. He got hit like 9 or 10 times, you know, with like a shotgun, a MAC-10, and a 9mm. Even in the movie, he shows all his scars. So, you know, that's why, you know, there's always a reason why people do what they do. Well, once they took out, when he was locked up, and I know you know this, once he was locked up and they took out his brother, that was a whole nother script, man. The Best Friends wound up hitting his brother. You know, I forget his name, man. It's not Culpepper, but who's the other defense attorney that's been, that you have in your show? He defended a lot of the YBI guys.
Oh, Steve Fishman.
Steve Fishman. Yeah, he even said in a couple shows I've seen, he's like, man, these guys say I'll do life, you know, before I snitch, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look down the list, when the shit hits the fan, brothers are singing like canaries in order to avoid some serious time.
Oh yeah, it's very few, and I don't know. To me, you know, as a young man, the whole, you know, criminal omerta, code of honor, and all that, you know, it meant something to me. But now, you know, as you get older, you see it's like a lot of things. It's like they sell these dreams, or they sell this facade to the youth, to the young kids, and they believe in all this stuff. And it's really, you know, most of the biggest dope dealers or the biggest criminal head or organized crime dudes, they're working hand in hand with cops. There's always some type of connection. You know, even like the cartels, they snitch on the other cartels. So, you know, at the end of the day, you can say all you want about death before dishonor, you know, omerta, the code of honor, but a lot of it, I mean, it's a pipe dream. You know, it's something that they glorify in movies and rap songs. But, you know, when it comes to real life, you know, I'm not saying that there are dudes that stand up and follow that all the way.
Straight up.
You know, but that's like.
But it's almost like it's almost like a psychological technique, like you said, when you're talking about the youth, whether it's a gang, whether it's, you know, mafia or whatever, you know, they kind of pump that into the youth. You need, even Al Qaeda, you know what I mean? The young, dumb, brainwashed youth. You need to have them believing in some kind of narrative, and those are the foot soldiers you need. Like, you know, you want, you know, death before dishonor, et cetera, et cetera. But it never tends to work out that way. We've seen from, you know, Frank Matthews. If anybody hasn't seen the Frank Matthews documentary, boy, if you thought Frank Lucas was the man, dude, man, Frank Matthews.
Oh no, yeah, Frank Matthews was. I mean, they call him Black Caesar.
Yeah, I mean, he still hasn't been caught. He just disappeared. I wonder if he's still alive. But getting back to Detroit, man, and why Rick might be still locked up. I mean, you're talking about political. There's so many political ties, like you said, Mayor Coleman Young, and a lot of people don't even know. They might recognize the face and the name. Rest in peace to the gentleman, Gil Hill, who was Axel Foley's chief in Detroit, in Beverly Hills Cop. He has some part in, you know, some of these. He was not necessarily a part of a shooting, but covering up a shooting. There was so much dirt going on in Detroit. Talk to me about the political implications as to why, because that's really what it is, why he's still locked up. He has, I forget, I should have did better research, but the lawyer who wound up getting promoted to, I think, a better federal position, he helped lie on Rick too. There's so many people who've gained and profited from this case.
Yeah, I think, you know, it was just a thing where, you know, I think him going out with the mayor's daughter was like a, you know, like a big embarrassment,
yeah.
You know, to the mayor, especially, you know, because, I mean, they're inside the government, so they know the truth. They know he was an FBI informant and all this type of stuff like that. I mean, because there's no way the people in the government, you know, of Detroit and the Detroit Police Department didn't know this, because he was doing stuff for them too. So, you know, like even Mayor Coleman came out, and called, like, on the news. He said Rick Wershe was a stool pigeon, and that's kind of crazy. You're the mayor of Detroit, and you're calling this guy a stool pigeon. So it just kind of shows the mentality. But that you got the people, you got Mayor Coleman Young, and then you got Gil Hill, and then that goes all the way to today. Gil Hill and Kim Worthy, they worked very, very closely together for a lot of years. In the government.
Gil Hill and who?
Gil Hill was like Kim Worthy, who's a prosecuting attorney in Wayne County, and who has been the one who's been blocking, all the motions that Rick's lawyers fight, to try to get resentenced and stuff like that. She's the one that's blocking it, and she's still the prosecuting attorney in Wayne County today. So it's like these ties. It's just like these strings and ties. If it was on the criminal side, they would call it a conspiracy.
Exactly.
But since it's on the government or the law enforcement side, it's all good, it's all hush hush. There's nothing there. But if it was on the flip side, they would make this big indictment and they would show the conspiracy. So that's kind of what we tried to do in the film. We tried to show this conspiracy, and we try to connect all these different webs, and like, we got ex-FBI agents, we interviewed Chris Hansen, who was one of the biggest reporters in Detroit.
Dateline NBC.
Yeah, he was covering all the stuff. I mean, he did To Catch a Predator, and now he's on Crime Watch Daily. But he did all the series, like on the Chambers Brothers, White Boy Rick, The Best Friends, Curry Brothers, all the big drug gangs in the 80s. He was out there. That's kind of how he made his name. We interviewed, ex-hitman Nate Boonecraft, ex-drug lord Johnny Curry, all the lawyers, Steve Fishman, Ralph Maselli, his other lawyer. And, when you listen to all these different parts that all these people know or that they played, and you put it all together, you can see everything for what it is. I mean, it's been a conspiracy to keep this man in jail just because they felt, that he exposed the corruption that they were doing. Or basically, if you want to take it down to street terms, the government people, like Mayor Coleman Young regime, they were getting money, and Rick Wershe messed up their money. So that's why he's still in prison.
Right. He stopped working for him.
Simple revenge tactic. They felt like he messed up the money that they were getting and exposed some of the stuff they were doing. Because in that police corruption case, the Sergeant Jimmy Harris, who was Mayor Coleman Young's, chief of security and the chief of security team that watched Catherine Volson Curry, he went down on that. Kathy Volson Curry's father, Willie Volson, who was like, the political, he was like the connection between like the street dudes and the political organization and the cops, he went down on that. So a lot of people went down because of information that Rick provided. And that's why it's so crazy, because it's like, you think, okay, he's an informant. All these people went down. He exposed all this corruption. Most places, he would have been kicked out. I mean, look at Sammy the Bull. Sammy the Bull murdered so many people, and he's out.
I mean, look at Boone. I mean, God love him, dude. But look at Boone, Nate Kraft. Like, brother, he, like you said, he's put a lot of people on the ground, and he's a free man.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
Well,
it's just crazy. So that's what.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're just that's when I've been writing him a long time, since like 2005, and then I did a couple big articles on him, like on the 6th in 2012. That was really the first time that he went on record saying that he was in police informant. Because being in prison, he didn't want to say that for a long time. Because I mean, nobody wants to be labeled a snitch in prison. Right. I mean, that's the worst thing you can be labeled. But
even to have his father, the kind of the lineage of, for lack of a better term, snitching, not just from him, or being an informant, not just from him, but also his father, that can't help him in prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, he was in there trying to survive. So for a lot of years, he didn't want to talk about that stuff. But then it got to the point where he's like, man, am I ever going to get out? So he started talking about it, and we kind of exposed that and brought that all out. But then when I got out in late 2014, early 2015, that was one of my goals. I was like, I wanted to get in films anyhow, and I was, I've been writing about gangsters for a long time, and kind of when I first started, because I was in prison, I was writing for my peers, so I was probably glorifying it and romanticizing a lot of the stuff. But, you know, once I got out, I knew if I wanted more people, you know, to like what I'm doing or appeal to a more Main Street audience, you know, you have to break stuff down in different ways so it appeals to more people. So when I got out, that was one of my goals. It was to get him out, and it was to find someone, you know, that would help me or have the infrastructure so we could make a film that would be almost like a advocacy type of piece that breaks down everything that went on. And, you know, I was extremely lucky because I hooked up with Sean Reck from Transition Studios, you know, who, you know, he's a Showtime director. He has like a Murder in the Park. He had already got Al Story Simon out of prison and Murder in the Park when I hooked up with him. And we talked about the idea, you know, and, you know, I got Rick, you know, I secured his cooperation for the film, and that was about 2 years ago, you know, and Sean Reck kind of took me under his wing. You know, really, I mean, I helped write and produce a film, and I provided a lot of access, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's Sean's film. You know, he's a filmmaker. He was a director. I mean, he's the one that made this whole ship run. You know, I would just kind of, you know, really, he kind of took me under his wing, and he's really taught me a lot the last year. But he even taught me, because there's a way you could take the gangster stuff, you know, and show it in stories like Rick and other stories with a lot of corruption and stuff like that. Because, I mean, a lot of these dudes, I'm not saying these dudes, you know, they're not bad dudes, or, you know, there's not a lot of mythology and street legends and stuff about them. But, I mean, a lot of times the government, and especially in this case, the government is just as corrupt. Like, there's a line in the film where I say on camera, where I say something to the effect, like I say, you know, everybody's going to knock a drug dealer for doing what he has to do, you know, to make a dollar. But, you know, no one is going to knock the government to do what they got to do, you know, to bust people or get people off the street, even if it's by corrupt means.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately, because quite frankly, what's going on, and I mean, this is just a microcosm. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast I do with USC Hall of Famer Pat Milich. It's called The Conspiracy Farm, but we talk about this all the time. The global network of the trade of guns, people, you know, just arms. It's just, it's absolutely insane. And there's in plenty of banks that are willing to wash these hundreds of millions of dollars. You've seen from Wachovia to Wells Fargo to, I mean, they're just everywhere. The fines, the hundreds of millions of dollars of fines that are levied for washing, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of drug money. But like you said, there seems to be more attention put on the lower level street, whatever, as opposed to the full on whomever that facilitates the whole thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you know, I feel like me, myself, you know, I had got 25 years when I was 22, and I did 21 straight years. So, you know, I feel like I'm kind of a victim of the drug war. So that's kind of been my goal since I've come back out to the world with my writing, and now as I'm moving to films, I want to expose the dirty secrets of the drug war, you know, and even like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you look at an institution like the DEA. The DEA seizes so much money, right, from people, and it's people that aren't even convicted or charged with anything, and the DEA goes in and just takes their money and keeps it. And it's like billions and billions of dollars. So how can you have a government agency that is basically like self-serving and feeds themselves, you know, and ensures their own survival by just going and seizing people's money, you know, if it's drug-related or not drug-related? So it's just, I mean, it's like crazy the way that these institutions have flourished and grew and become into these big things. And, you know, you see it all, like with the medical marijuana and the big pharma now, and it's just crazy. Like, you know, they're saying all this stuff coming out now, medical marijuana, you know, can help opiate addiction and all this different stuff. But yet these big pharma companies, you know, they're not having it. They're putting all their money into fight, you know, medical marijuana legalization, because they're making so much money, you know, off of, you know, all these, you know, heroin derivatives and stuff like that have our whole nation and kids and people all over the nation addicted to this stuff and OxyContin. And it's just, it's like crazy, like the greed, man, and the war on drugs, and it all ties in, and you can just really see how it's all money motivated.
Yeah, like I said, especially if you could do the homework and see where, you know, the trail lies. It's always in the dough. And like again, you can name the politicians who are involved, and like you can name the huge banks who've historically been involved in this racket, and it's absolutely insane, man. And I'm hoping, you know, not just a movie like yours, man, and like I said, I've been kind of studying Rick Wershe, and I've known about Rick Wershe for some time, and it's very much so indicative of the hypocrisy of the drug laws, etc. But a la the success of what was that movie called, Making of a Murder, which just like man, broke the internet when that came out. But it wound up reopening that case of that whole thing. And I don't know if they're going to free that person or how that wound up going, but it was that social momentum from that movie that wound up, changing things in that regard. So I'm hoping, honestly, dude, and I know you are too, that the impact of this movie starts making those people accountable. Whoever that state prosecutor is, I know that's not, I don't know if that's I think that's an appointed position, but, start voting, start calling, start making these people accountable for their actions. But you got to get hip to what's going on. Like, you can't know, your actions are irrelevant if you don't know what's really going on. So I think this movie, and I hope this movie helps bring some serious awareness to what was going on in Detroit. And if you know anything about Detroit, fast forward however many years, Kwame Kilpatrick, etc., it's been a spot rife. I'm sure Detroit's a lovely city, but politically, it's been rife with corruption for some time. And unfortunately, not young anymore, but Mr. Rick Wershe's paid for it for a good fucking few decades.
Yeah, and I just think even like situations like Detroit, and I'm not saying all politicians or all law enforcement people are corrupt. I mean, I know there's some good people that are trying to do the right thing, but even like Detroit, Detroit, is a microcosm of stuff that's going on all over, and we even see it now with Trump and all the whispers about this and all the whispers about that. And there were whispers about Mayor Coleman Young for years. I mean, he never got convicted or anything, or he never went down.
Mm-mm.
But when you look at it in retrospect, a lot of times when there's whispers, a lot of time that stuff is true.
Right.
And when it's on a criminal side, if they make it a criminal, that's a conspiracy. But if it's a government or the establishment, then it's like kept under wraps. It's all hush hush.
Yeah.
And nothing ever happens, and they're never held accountable, like you said.
And again, it is just a microcosm from like the local level of Detroit, which is still a big city, up to the federal level, where even the global level, our politicians, nobody's ever held accountable. Because if you start pulling that string of like your top officials being complicit of this or that conspiracy, it's like, well, who isn't involved? From Watergate or whatever, everything always goes to the top, as we notice. And like you said, it's interesting how the law is applied from, the government side that winds up completely covering its ass, while we wound up again hearing about fines levied to all these huge banks. It's all, like you said, cops always have to be involved. Not literally, like you said, not all cops. I've had family members and friends that are cops, but none of these things can go down without the tacit approval of your cops, your local government, that winds up oftentimes, feeding the larger machine.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day too, it all comes back to money. Just like anything criminals are doing, how they're doing, people selling drugs or whatever, they're doing it for money. But I mean, really, the governments are the biggest gangs. I mean, they're trying to get money too. They're trying to use their position as a hustle to get whatever they can to enrich themselves. And I mean, I guess maybe that's capitalism. That's what America's about. But
I mean, it in a weird, sick way, it is. But like you said, the application of the law, it doesn't tease out that way. I've had on Freeway Rick Ross, who I know you know as well, and I've spoken to recently. Perfect example. He was unbeknownst to him, he was a part of a CIA operation to bring crack cocaine into South Los Angeles. You know what I mean? And that whole thing created it's just. And honestly, whether people realize it or not, was a part of Iran-Contra and the Clintons and Bushes.
And it ignited the crack epidemic. All that cocaine ignited the crack epidemic and destroyed African American communities.
Absolutely.
And I would say, even from then, then with the mass incarceration and the war on drugs, I don't think most African American communities haven't recovered from that yet. I mean, they're still in the throes of all that, that was, subjugated through cocaine being brought in by the CIA.
Absolutely. Like you said, the ramifications are still evident to this day. And then, exit crack, and then now you have all this heroin, fentanyl business. I mean, it's really twisted, man. And like I said, not to get into a too large of a conversation, divert from Rick, but under the Taliban, now the Taliban was good, but they didn't have heroin going on. But once we went in there, the heroin trade throughout the world increased by some 200%. And we see every day kids dying from this shit. So it's like, it's no puzzle to me, and probably yourself. They're profiting off this, as they always have. Like I said, guns, people, it's some twisted shit. And unfortunately, Rick Wershe on a smaller level is a victim of, some political. I forget it was you or Scott Bernstein. I think it's his name. He's a political prisoner. Like he's literally.
Oh yeah. No, Scott said he is. He's a political prisoner. That's why, man. I'm just hoping we can get enough eyeballs and make a big enough impact. There's a possibility of him having another parole hearing in June, so hopefully that'll come through and they'll let him out. He will still have to go deal with the Florida case, but our movie is going to build pressure, and then right on the heels of our movie being released, in January 2018 is going to be the Hollywood version of his.
The movie. Yeah, I heard. Is that real?
Yeah.
Is that legit?
They've been filming it. Yeah, with Matthew McConaughey, Jennifer Jason Leigh. They have Bruce Dern. They found this young hip-hop kid, like a Caucasian kid from inner city Baltimore, named Richie Merritt, who's playing Rick.
Oh.
They got a lot of different rappers to play the different roles, and it's going to be a real explosive, spectacular movie too. They got Jan Damage, real critically acclaimed, British director. He's the director of it. They got Scott Franklin as one of the producers. He did like Black Swan and The Wrestler and stuff like that. So it's
gonna be so dope. Oh, it's gonna be so dope, dude. That is gonna
It's like a $40 to $60 million budget in a Hollywood feature.
Dude, they're
actually filming right now. They're filming right now in Cleveland, and Scott Bernstein is like one of the consultants for that.
Oh, dude, that guy's he's a Rain Man on this shit, guy. That guy is.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was at him, he picked me up from the airport when we flew into Detroit, and I stayed with him all day hanging out. He's doing Rick's biography right now too, so.
Yeah, I mean, he goes back to, like, the Jewish gangs in Detroit, the Purple Gang. Like, dude, I've followed his work forever, man. But literally, man, for Rick, for this thing to kind of get pulled back and really, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie The Hurricane, the whole thing with Reuben Hurricane Carter. He had to go through all those state trials, which were horseshit, and he really had to expose on a federal level, because the states where all the books were cooked, he had to expose on a federal level all the intricacies of all the shit that corrupted his case. And that's almost what has to happen here. I mean, I hope, and I really do hope, that these movies, yours and the motion picture, creates that kind of groundswell that you just can't deny it anymore. You know what I mean? And I know Rick's man, y'all need to hurry up with this.
It's definitely been building. Even the filmmaker I'm working with, Sean Rick, he leaked some of the Nate Boone craft footage, after we did the interview. And when he did that, and he said that Gil Hill told him to kill White Boy Rick, Kim Worthy backed off, and she said she's not going to block, because she had been blocking, every time, that he was coming up, because one judge tried to re-sentence him, and she blocked it. She appealed it, and she came out, like, the day after, this footage was leaked. She came out, and she said, she's changing her stance, on the Rick Wershe case, and she's going to
really?
She's not going to stand in the way. She's going to leave it to the parole board. So, I mean, we've already
which is a whole other conversation about the parole board and who those people are. Like that's a that's a whole other beast to overcome. That's some political horse shit right there. That parole board.
Yeah. They're appointed by the governor. So, I mean, hopefully, an ideal situation would just be the governor, doing the right thing and just, standing up and letting him go, pardon him or whatever. But
how many years has he been in, man? How many years has Rick been in?
He's going on 29 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's 30.
Since 1988.
That's just unheard of, man. That's just crazy.
And he was 17 years old. Wow. And he got busted for 8 kilos. So, I mean, it's just, it's crazy, man. I really feel for the dude.
I mean, like you said, it's not like he's completely an angel or innocent of everything, but like, man, he's done his time, and people who've done worse are out.
Yeah, murderers, rapists, pedophiles do less time.
Yeah, I mean, that just lets you know. I mean, that is some political shit right there. I mean, there's no other explanation for it. When you have people who've done significantly way worse crimes out, and you're in, and then you peel it back, and he's got all these associations. Like, okay, well there it is. Like you can't. It's political prisoner right there. I can't wait to see it, man. And again, congratulations and continued success with this. And I will do all I can to help, raise awareness. Because I mean, this is going to be obviously a movie that needs to be out, and I really can't wait to see the motion picture as well. And I don't know if you're familiar with what was that? Kill the Messenger, that got into the whole. Gary Webb, Rick Ross,
Gary Webb, yeah.
It just brings an awareness. You know what I mean, guys? Yes, absolutely. I've been chewing on this shit for, unfortunately, way too long, and I have people who look at me so strange when I talk about it because they think I'm a freaking nutbag, but it's so cool to see so much, the language changing now. We're now finally talking about fake news and Operation Mockingbird and these conversations, it's making it mainstream, which is, gives me a little bit of I don't know, makes me feel a little more positive about things coming, even though the world's on fire. But, brother, give me a shout out. What kind of social networking can we find you? Where can we find Mr. Seth Ferranti, or a trailer to the flick, or any info on the flick?
If all you have to do is Google White Boy documentary trailer, and it'll come up. There's a trailer on Vimeo. There's also a trailer, for the film festival. It's called the Free Film Festival for the Detroit Free Press, and they have a link. So if you did Free Film Festival, White Boy Rick, the trailer would come up. But then you can find me. I got my website, Gorilla Convict. It's like everything gangster, all the gangster articles and interviews and stuff I did. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like all under my name, Seth Ferranti. But
you write for Vice. And don't forget, you write for. I don't know if you continue to write for Vice. You have written for Vice.
No, I write for Vice. Yeah, I write for Vice. I write for Ozzy. I actually just did a feature on Nate Boomcraft for Penthouse. It's going to be in the May Penthouse. It's called Evolution of Hitman. Where he kind of tells his story. And I got a lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of interesting stuff. I'm moving more into the film world. Trying to do some different things, and I mean, eventually, I want to start doing features. But I'm kind of, I feel kind of at a disadvantage because, I spent so much time inside just writing. So now I'm out and, I'm working with different filmmakers and I'm learning, and I'm kind of, I decided when I came out, I didn't want to go to film school and take 4 years or this or that. I just wanted, to start working with filmmakers and learning so that I can become a filmmaker, and that's what I've been doing.
Well, you definitely saved yourself on some school loans there if that was wouldn't have been your route. But I think movies like this, man, are definitely going to open doors for you, bro. I mean, like I said, I've been following a lot of your work, and not just your writing work, but your books as well. I got your Supreme Team book right here, as well as your Street Legends that you sent me, man. Just awesome stories, man. It's so cool. Well, the different you've lived a few lives, my man, and you've gotten yourself exposed to some very interesting stuff. You have some very interesting stories, and what you've done, at least from what I could tell from the trailer on the Rick Wershe story, you might be hugely responsible for freeing this man. So kudos to you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, man. I would like to see him. That's what I always tell him. I've been telling him, every year, like, this is your year, and I really feel like, now 2017, because he deserves to be out, man. He's done too much time. Like I said, yeah, he's severely. It's probably one of the worst cases of over sentencing in Michigan history, if not U.S. history.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous when you get into the story. But again, man, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so looking forward to catching the movie. It is called White Boy. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's called White Boy. Yeah, and they're looking for a buyer right now. So as soon as they find a buyer, there'll be an announcement. And it's going to be somewhere. We don't know yet. They're in negotiations, but like I say, the guy I'm working with, Sean Reck, his last film, A Murder in the Park, is on. It was on Showtime, and now it's on Netflix too. So it's going to be someplace big, man. But these type of things take time, and
of course,
I'm interested to find out where it does end up. Because I can't wait. Well, I mean, we've caused like a little wave right now, but I know, when you get on something like that and you just get so many eyeballs on it and people start talking about it, because even though there's people like us that know this story, I mean, there's millions and millions of people that tens of millions of people that have never heard of this story that, if they did hear about it, and when they do hear about it, they're going to be outraged.
Well, and it's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but you're not only riding a wave of an actually produced film that you guys have done. You're talking about Matthew McConaughey and Jennifer Jason Leigh in a big budget movie. So I mean, that between the two of those, that's going to tag team to create some serious inertia on getting that truth out. Because like you said, almost like what Reuben Hurricane Carter said, with that federal deposition he gave to that judge, like, once you see the truth, you will not be able to turn away from this. You know what I mean? As much nuance and so much shit going on with it, with corruption and all this other shit. Once this stuff is laid out, I mean, like you said, he was freaking an employee of the feds when he was 16 years old at the Hearns Hagler fight, or whatever it was in Vegas. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
And that's what I think. I think this film, it's just like the Hurricane film, just like the Memphis 3, just like Making a Murderer. I mean, I believe this film is going to have the same impact, and it's going to get them out, and it's going to open up a lot of eyes, and expose the dirty secrets of the drug war, man. Stuff that they've been trying to keep under wraps.
Well, and it's a beautiful thing, man.
It's exposed.
It is, man. And honestly, over the last several years, like I said, I've been thought of as a crazy man for talking some of the stuff I talk, but it's now becoming a little bit more mainstream. And what he's going to talk about, Rick Wershe, if he does get out, and even now he talks about it, how there's so much corruption from the top level to the bottom that goes on, while players in the game like him who did do dirt wind up serving way more. You know what I mean? It's just this misapplication of the law, but. Again, man, thank you so very much, Seth Ferranti, brother. I appreciate it, man. And seriously, job well done, and hopefully this bears the fruit that we all hope for. Hello?
Let me know, man. We're both in St. Louis. We got to get together sometime, man. Hang out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been Seth Ferranti. He is an author. He is a filmmaker, and he's doing some very good things to free a dude who has definitely served his time. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. There will be more. All right, my bad, dude. I didn't know, I didn't think I was signing off, but yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Holy shit, dude. That's what's up, man. I was flipping through the pictures last night, and I saw you and Boone, and I've seen pretty much all the damn documentaries on him, so I'm just like, damn, that was crazy.
Yeah. No, Boone is pretty cool, man. I mean,
now I'm sure he is. Shit.
For what it is. I mean,
like you said, can't use his left hand.
He's not a dude.
Like, did you say he got shot? He can't use his left arm or left hand. It's like, hello.
Craft. I mean, I guess you don't want to see Boone come out.
No.
That's probably when things could get deadly.
Right, and I can't even imagine, dude. Just hearing that resume and how those guys used to get down, like, no thanks.
That's why even I did like the article for him in Penthouse, and like I said it to him, like, make sure you're cool with this. I don't want to have you like, afterwards, like you're after me because I misquoted you.
You know what I mean?
To make sure Yeah.
I mean, he's told his story enough times. Like, shit, he's I'm hoping he's cool with it, because like I said, I seen him on that Gangland. I think he was either Al Prophet's flick or that Flip Wilson. I mean, I've seen enough of them where it's like, shit, that brother's story's out there.
Yeah. So I got his number though, so I talked to him. Hopefully, if I'm hoping, man, if this White Boy movie gets big enough, that it's going to lead to some spin-offs, because I'd like to write a book about Boone.
Oh, yeah.
Have him tell, I
mean,
like
going back to his Vietnam, like, hell yeah, dude. I some of the things that just stick out about him, like the Vietnam training, and then bring it back to the hood. And then when he talked about how the cops used to put him and some other cats out in Belle Isle, the fucking water, and shoot at him and shit. It's like, damn, dude. It's
just crazy, man. Crazy life.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the White Boy, like, he's talking about how when White Boy Rick was going to court, he was sitting on a building across from the courthouse, with a sniper rifle, trying to, get a shot so he could kill him.
Yeah, that's
like,
right. He
dude,
was
like,
contracted
that's
to
like
kill
some
him.
movie shit.
Yeah, the
he was
state
just doing
shit.
movie type shit, Mission Impossible.
I know, dude. But he was that dude, man. He was that cat, like, coming back with that freaking military training, which he applied it to some fucking Sith Lord shit, man. That brother, it's just no joke. All right, man. I actually have another interview literally in like 15 minutes, but man, thanks a lot, dude. And yeah, dude, we have to link up, man. I just come by the bar. I'm usually at that juke joint on the weekends or whatever, man. But ooh, shit. Even outside of that, man, we should still link up and sit down, and just chop it up, bro.
All right, yeah, no, definitely. Like I say, you know, I'll be working a lot. I'm really busy, but you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to California in the middle of May, but
I'm not going anywhere, brother. You
could.
always going somewhere. Your shit's always popping up somewhere around the world, which is a beautiful thing. Like, you were in Jamaica not long ago. I mean, shit, brother, you were inside for a hot minute. That's why I'm so glad to see you travel. I'm like, this brother didn't come out and just sit around. You went out and saw the fucking world, dude. Yeah, baby. That's what's up, dude. Yeah, and all the work you're doing. That's why, man, big shout outs to you, brother. I mean, I'm a big fan, man. So honestly, that's you really carving out a nice little niche. Yeah, for real, dude. We will we'll link up sooner than later, my friend.
All right. Well, look, be safe and thanks, man. All right.
All right. We'll talk soon, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Later, Seth.